Okay, I want to welcome everybody and thank you for joining. My name is Andrew Cokes. I'm the head of marketing for HGS. Again, thank you for joining this webinar titled Framework for Actionable Customer Analytics. This is another installment in a series of webinars on helping businesses to compete by optimizing the customer experience. If you've missed our previous webinars, please visit us on teamhgs.com. And you can find on our business intelligence page the links to go back and replay prior webinars. We do have another webinar planned for you on January 13th titled Journey to Net Promoter Score. Please join to hear more about the importance of developing a positive current in your business as a method to driving exceptional customer experience and enterprise-leading results. A few housekeeping items before we get started today. The slides will be provided to all participants following a brief post-webinar survey, so please look for the survey immediately following this event, and we'll get you a copy of the slides as a follow-up to that. We always appreciate your feedback. You may also want to download a couple of useful documents in the handout box, including a special report from Everest on the use of analytics. So take a look at that, some good materials you can get today just on this webinar. If you're not familiar with HGS, HGS is a global BPO leader in digital transformation, providing consumer engagement solutions to optimize the customer experience, making global brands that we support more competitive by helping them to find the balance between enabling great customer experience, growing the business, and the competing interest for cost and capital constraints in the business. If you are interested in the handout, the HGS corporate brochure is available for more in-depth review of our services, capabilities, global positioning. If you want to hear a replay of today's event, it will also be available on the teamhgs.com business intelligence page starting tomorrow. To ask any questions during this presentation, please submit them online using the question panel that's available to you. Submit those throughout the course of the event. We do have time set aside at the end to make sure that we get to as many of those questions as possible. So please keep this interactive. Today's event will be interactive. We'll be using poll questions. We'll be sharing the insights and perspectives from our thought leaders as well as from the broad online audience of brand leaders, customer experience practitioners, media representative, analysts, and other professionals. And so again, thank you for joining this webinar on a framework for actionable analytics. We know that the need for to know the customer, to personalize engagement, to empower self-service, and drive consistency across channels has never been more important. It drives to the core of how businesses really intend to compete now and into the future. All things kind of being equal, product, features, and pricing, experience really today is the opportunity to positively set your brand apart. But there's a gap. You know, only 8% of consumers today think that brands are actually doing a good job. So a closed-loop approach to analytics can convert large amounts of data that we all have into actionable insights to begin to address this gap. Understanding that the most confusing part, though, of any analytics program is really determining where and how to get started. Today's webinar will share trends and practical application of analytic methods to create real business impact. So without any further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's featured presenters. One, Katrina Menzigan is the Vice President with Research Practice at Everest Group. As a veteran analyst, she has deep experience in monitoring and identifying dynamics, shaping business process, service markets, and in helping both buyers and providers of these services make smart decisions about their outsourcing and global service choices. Katrina engages with the broader market through her published research, blogs, speaking engagements, and custom research projects. Customer experience management and contact center outsourcing is a key focus area within her practice. We'll also be hearing today from Preet Kalra, who is a senior HGS leader and Six Sigma black belt with over 16 years in the business process outsourcing industry. PK, as we like to refer to him, has managed functions like business analytics, transformation, migrations, consulting, operations, business excellence. He's also a certified outsourcing professional from IEOP, and today PK is responsible for innovation practices and expanding solutions and capabilities to leverage analytics and empower customers to self-serve. with all of that in mind, to get us kicked off today on our conversation about actionable analytics, I want to hand over to Katrina to give us just a little more insight and to share some background on the evolving industry expectations and what are some of the latest trends, Katrina, from your perspective.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm really happy to be here today to talk to our audience and really appreciate the chance to share some of our findings. So, yeah, you set the context really nicely in terms of the fact that, you know, lots of effort is being put into analytics, lots of thought, but it's a big target, and so honing in our focus and our efforts and our resources is really important to getting value. So some of the things that I'd like to talk to you about today are, first of all, you know, what are the key trends overall shaping customer experience management? I'm sure we all have viewpoints on this, but I wanted to put something out there to start our conversations. But then, what are some of the typical bottlenecks that are slowing things down? We do see companies tend to struggle with a set of challenges that are common, and so I wanted to highlight some of those and talk about how those can be moved to a better place. The role of customer analytics is increasing as we talk about creating customer impact, and I'd like to share some of our findings on what is that role and what are the kinds of impacts that we're talking about. And then lastly, you know, after PK speaks, I'll come back with a few points on things that everybody should be considering as they develop their analytics strategy, as they look at maybe addressing past challenges around analytics or trying to refine efforts that are already underway. So that's kind of an overview of where we're going to spend the next 15 minutes or so. One of the things that I think is important to recognize is that the world of contact center services and customer care services, even though it's a mature area, it is continually evolving. And so what we've tried to capture here is a view of the traditional contact center value proposition across the top here, the yellow band, against the emerging contact center value proposition. And in reality, there are 3 or 4 main levers that impact the success and the outcomes from contact center work. And we're going to talk about those 3 here, and I'm comparing them between the traditional and the emerging scenario. So if we look at a traditional in-house contact center as our baseline and our starting point, labor arbitrage is one of those key things that we've used over the years to change the processes and to change the cost model around our contact centers. Now, historically, we have found that this lever of value contributes about 50 to 60% savings in many cases across contact center operations and customer care operations. Well, today we're finding that that portion of impact is decreased, really. Labor arbitrage is still an important part of the value proposition, but it's a decreasing portion. So today it's half of what it used to be. Another value lever that we look at is process improvement. And in this case, process improvement today is offering more of the value that comes from these customer interaction operations than it has in the past. In other words, the processes are more of a focus area, and driving value from those processes is becoming increasingly a focus area. And then lastly, looking at how the operations in the contact center actually impact overall business outcomes is becoming a more important lever as well. And it's also becoming an area, as we'll see later in my comments, where more responsibility and more focus is being put in terms of the outcomes that we're expecting from our operations, and in some cases from our service partners, around linking what's happening on the operational side to those business metrics we're trying to move. And so the end result is that this new model actually has the potential of delivering more value at lower cost compared to the traditional model. Again, because we're looking at these other levers in a more strategic way than we have in the past. So in that context, then we start looking at the issue of customer experience management. And suddenly it's a bit more complex than it used to be, because we're now looking at multiple levers. So definitely successful customer relationship management is more complex than it used to be, and it has to be applied in the right way. So these are 5 areas here that we often look at around customer experience management. These are all familiar to you as things that you think about: the multi-channel factor, the smart analytics, Consumer expectations are changing in so many different ways. Social media is a completely interesting and disruptive way of engaging the consumer market. And then with all of this happening, our staff has to be skilled in the right way to support this evolving approach to customer interaction. So I wanted to focus on 3 areas here. And the multi-channel, the smart analytics, and the social media. These 3 are sort of a triumvirate in the sense that you need all 3 to work together in tackling any one of them. So you can't tackle one of them without incorporating elements of the others. With multi-channel, we've been talking about it for 15 years, at least that I can recall, and we're still working at it. It's an ongoing work in progress, possibly because we have new channels being added as the years have gone by, but also because we kind of haven't really figured out how to get the most value across this integration, how to actually make the integration seamless, and then how to get the value. And this is where the smart analytics comes in. So the smart analytics is now better able to create that common sense, natural consumer experience as they move from interacting with your business from one channel to the other. And it's the analytics that is greasing those wheels that will allow the customer to have a satisfactory, stress-free experience because their business is recognized and known. Their buying patterns are recognized and known, hopefully. That's the goal we're going towards. So it's when you are bringing this in that the multi-channel becomes more effective. And social media, of course, there's no point in deploying social media support unless you have analytics incorporated into it. Because without that analytics, you're driving with blinders on. And it ranges anywhere from the simple monitoring of the social media to effectively responding to it to actually getting ahead of potential social media driven issues that might be in the consumer base. And so these 3 are very important capabilities that can be very effective if done right. So this whole world of customer experience management, it can be difficult to achieve. We've certainly seen that, as I was alluding to earlier, those multiple capabilities, those multiple things to think about, that complexity. But on top of it, there's some other things going on. And I'm going to begin kind of at the top here at stakeholder alignment and then go clockwise. With the increase in number of channels and social media being the primary one here, we're finding that entities across internal organizations that previously may not have been as vested in the outcomes of the contact center, outcomes of that customer interaction process, are now very vested and very involved. And so it's not uncommon to see decision-making committees around customer interaction that now involve people from the marketing organization, for example, or more direct involvement at a strategic level from the IT organization. And the reason being is that social media especially involves brand equity. It can increase your brand equity or it can decrease it, correct? And so suddenly how you interact with your consumers through the contact center, which is where social media support happens, is of interest to the marketing professional. And by extension, that marketing professional may be bringing their ad agency or their branding partner into the discussion as well, because now your contact center agent has to be supporting that brand in the way that was envisioned earlier. It's not just a brand around the customer experience. It's now in support of the overarching brand of the organization. So that's an example of stakeholder alignment. And let's not forget that the data needed to accomplish all of this also sits in different areas of the organization. And so again, the marketing organization, as an example, needs to contribute their data and be able to incorporate that into that customer interaction process for maximum value. So that stakeholder alignment becomes critical. The immature internal data environment, a lot of companies continue to struggle with their different sources of data, the condition and the complexity of those sources, the technology that those are accessed through, and the ability to put them into a collaborative environment where all the different data needed to have the kind of ideal customer experience is available and accessible. So, different companies obviously are at different levels of maturity there. The lack of an adoption roadmap refers to the fact that many organizations could have multiple initiatives going on. They could be at different levels of maturity of those different initiatives that are all designed to impact that customer experience or improve the brand experience. So how do you bring this all together? And how do you make sure that you have a well thought out adoption roadmap that takes into consideration all these complexities? And so oftentimes the isolated nature of some of these initiatives takes away from the ultimate goal of creating impact. We've already talked a little bit about channel integration strategies. Let's say that, you know, for this point in the conversation, we acknowledge that it's an ongoing challenge, and it's not going to get any easier as the channels in the marketplace continue to expand. And so having a constant monitoring of this is an important focus area. And then lastly, think about all the different kinds of skills that we've talked about in the last 10 minutes. We've talked about staff CSR agent skills. We've talked about having social media skills internally, not only to support social media interaction, but to plan for it, to brand for it, and the technology associated with it. Same thing for analytics. Requires a whole new set of skills that a lot of organizations may or may not have. So you either have to go hire for it or you have to retrain for it. And so getting to a point where those skill sets are at the level that you want can often be a challenge. And that contributes to how quickly you can achieve your goals around customer experience management. So analytics, as we've been talking about, is prevalent across many of these challenges as well as opportunities. This is a model that we use at Everest Group to talk about the life cycle around analytics and the impact that analytics can create. And you know, all of us are most familiar with this whole world of reporting and descriptive analytics. This is where, you know, you're looking at static pieces of information to look at what's happened in the past in order to make sense of what you think is going to happen in the future. But the data you have is from the past, and it's static, and it's usually coming from a particular data source, a particular application or department or a set of activities. When we talk about descriptive analytics, it's the next step beyond the reporting, right? It is taking a deeper look at what does this data mean if I were to slice it and bring more depth to the comparison points that I'm making. So in the case of social media, it's not just tracking social media interactions, it might be understanding who are the key influencers at a nuanced level, maybe by product or by offering category, for example. So you're going to the next level. When we start getting to things like predictive and prescriptive analytics, this is where we are entering a realm where we may be involved with multiple sources of data beyond what we've traditionally looked at. So the volume of data grows by definition. It may involve data from outside your organization as well as inside. So the number of sources of data have now changed. We're going from probably more structured data to less structured data is another characteristic here. And so you've got, you know, this is where the world of big data comes in, and we start looking at more complex modeling and algorithms. We're talking about models that might help you draw conclusions about consumer behavior so that you can stay a step ahead of what you think might be happening with the consumers out there. When you get into prescriptive analytics, you are now trying to have scenarios potentially or have outcomes that you anticipate happening and trying to get ahead of those so that you can predict where to be prepared to respond. So a classic example is to take to see ahead and see where an at-risk consumer is likely to be coming up and being prepared to respond to that. And so a lot of this needs to happen in real time as well. That's the other interesting thing about predictive and prescriptive. There's a lot of real-time work going on here, whereas the earlier forms of analytics were not so real-time. And so this is another source of actionable behavior coming from analytics, but again, to get to that point requires a lot of skills, technology, investments, and process redesign. To give you a sense of what's happening with the adoption of analytics within the contact center space, within the outsourcing space, I'd like to share with you some of our data. And what we have found is that when we look at the inclusion of customer analytics in the scope of the contact center engagements that we track, as an example, we're finding dramatic growth. You know, it's grown at a rate of inclusion of about 200% between about 3-4 years ago to, let's say 5 years ago till today, we're finding that the inclusion level goes up not only with renewing contracts where the scope expands organically, but as well as with new contracts. When people are starting off, they're already asking for the inclusion of analytics. And so what's driving this? We've been alluding to it somewhat, but more specifically, we're looking certainly for more intelligent visibility to be part of that consumer experience. We're looking to integrate the multiple service operations that you may have across geographies, across channels, or making sure that customer engagement goes smoothly between channels. You're also looking for a very clear understanding of the impact of your investments. When you put money and time, effort into it, what is the outcome you're achieving? You're really trying to make that connection tighter than it's been in the past. And then, of course, all of this leads to this concept of outcome-based performance. So the analytics allows us to more clearly understand and to monitor and to change behavior around outcome-based performance for our engagements and our contact center practices. Examples of actual analytics in action, things like increased conversion of online sales, being able to drive, this is a business outcome somebody would be seeking, right? Is show me how this is converting my online sales. How can we make our agents more intelligent in terms of the support that they're offering, their interactions and the consumers they're touching? Video chat, how can we improve sales outcomes through video chat? A new channel and a new way to use it, and the analytics allows us to better understand that. So this is just some of the examples that we're actually seeing deployed in the marketplace today. So if you're going to do outcome-based work and you need analytics to help you do it, how are you measuring it? What's the criteria that you're using? And obviously we need new criteria to measure this new behavior and these new outcomes. So this is a chart where you can spend some time looking at it later on, but it organizes the kinds of performance metrics that we see in contact center services from the more traditional that are along the bottom, which are more focused on timeliness and throughput, which are all efficiency metrics, to today we're seeing more effectiveness and quality-oriented metrics, sort of like escalation rates and things like quality of response. And where we're moving to, if we look forward, is this whole focus on business outcome-related metrics. And in order to do that, to look at things like customer satisfaction, to look at brand evangelist, I have a problem with that word. So your brand evangelist index for social media, how do you measure that? But that's a direct outcome of your analytics that allows you to do that. And certainly net promoter scores. Those are becoming more of all of these forward-looking criteria. I'd say NPS is the one we hear most often embraced today. So just a little something to have in your back pocket as you think through your future outcome work. And lastly, what is the business of analytics services looking at? What are some of the things characterizing it? So this is going to help you when you go out there and you're trying to partner with a provider or a vendor. One of the things we see, increased productization. And what that means is these analytics capabilities within the customer care services world are increasingly becoming productized so that it's not a one-off kind of experimental experience that you may have, but your service provider will be putting together the best practices based on their experiences. They'll be putting together their own intellectual property. They may be partnering with other vendors to have the right IT, but they're coming to the table with a capability that they want to include in the portfolio of services they offer you. And so that's something you should be looking for. And it of targeted solutions that address particular customer service or technical support or social media challenges, or it could be in the form of a platform that goes deeper and broader across the whole customer care life cycle. So there's different variations of it. Machine learning and automation. This is where we're finding that analytics algorithms continue to self-learn and self-evolve. It is something that's happening today. I won't say it's mainstream, but it is very much part of the discussion of some of the early adopters and the leading thinkers around analytics. How do we use what we learn from the analytics to make the activities smarter and the actual analytics learn from past interaction? And then certainly outcome-based pricing. Being able to identify the value of that analytics work and the processes that the analytics are affecting through an outcome-based pricing model. Okay, so I'll leave it at that right now because I think some of the things that PK will be covering in his section will illustrate some of the points I've made, and I definitely want to make sure he has time to do that. So I will hand back over, and we'll go on to the poll at this point.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much for that insight. That really helpful. I think a nice time to take a quick break and just get the pulse of everybody that's participating. So if you can, go ahead. Let's take a look. What are the challenges you're experiencing in terms of implementing analytics? And there's several things that Katrina just talked about: stakeholder alignment, is it immature internal data environments, a lack of adoption roadmap, channel integration challenges, or shortage of analytics and social media skills. Go ahead. We'd like everybody to go ahead and complete that. I can see just about a third of you have voted. I'll give you just a couple more seconds while everybody's weighing in, and then I'll turn it back over and get some reaction. It looks like we have a couple themes that are kind of popping up here. So we're a little over half of the people have voted now. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in just a couple seconds, and then I'm going to share the results because there's some interesting things I think coming through here. Okay, I closed it, and let me go ahead and share that now. Hopefully everybody's taking a look at the results. You can see about 61% said immature internal data environments, followed by the second place kind of being two things: lack of adoption roadmap, shortage of analytic social media skills. What's your thought to that? Is that in line with what you're seeing, Katrina?
It is. It is. These are organizational challenges that affect companies large and small. When you have a larger organization, of course, you've got more legacy, you've got more embedded work, you've got more data in different areas. When you're a small organization, you may not have established enough data infrastructure, so you struggle to get the quantity and the nature of data that would be helpful. So it's, all of these things are relevant.
Excellent. Hey, PK, what's your thought in terms of what you're seeing?
Andrew, I think the poll answers are very much in line with what we are seeing in various organizations that we work with, and it's a very, very natural, kind of progression of how some of the companies have started to adopt analytics and how some of these challenges have been preventing or has been taking time. So it's very much in line. What I can do is I can quickly jump into something that I thought would be a very good segue into where I start. First of all, thanks, Katrina. I think some of the points that you made are very, very, very relevant in terms of what we will also talk about. Just to give you a little bit of a brief of what I'm going to be talking about, Katrina very nicely kind of showed us where the industry is moving, and at the same time, what should we be looking at. What I'm going to be talking about is how we can do that. The first thing is that I would like to share with you is a study, and after the poll, it fits in very well here. I wanted to give the kind of comfort to the participants that it's not that we are alone here. This is a universal problem that we are seeing of the adoption levels, the speed at which organizations are being able to adopt some of the practices, deploy analytics, design frameworks, etc., is pretty standard. So what I did was I picked up some of these data from a very interesting study and shared with you. Let me quickly talk about and elaborate a little bit. So for example, lack of understanding where and how to deploy analytics is one of the main areas where analytics is a big word. How do I deploy it with my organization? Where do I start? How do I convince the stakeholders as to this will make sense and this will give us the results that we really need or we're looking at? So I will talk a little bit more about how we do that. Also, there is a lot of issue about how much of an investment do we make in terms of the skill, the platforms, etc. Is also a big discussion point with a lot of organizations, and which is primarily because of how have we been able to design the framework or look at some of the tangible gains which can justify or pay for the number of resources that you need, the kind of skills that you need, the kind of expensive platforms that you need to be able to do that. Lastly, but not the least, which is an important part, is a lot of organizations are siloed, where the data is sitting in one function. Does the function want to share it with the other department or not? A lot of those dependencies also make the learning curve, or also are not able to justify what we are trying to do in Department 1, which has an impact in Department 3, 4, 5, or even outside the organization itself. So that's what I would do, is quickly get into some of the examples and talk a little bit about how some of that we can overcome. The first and most important thing that I would like to talk about is how do we actually start? Like I touched upon, that analytics is not just something which you can look at it within your function, or is something that we can look at some of the interdependencies onto some of the other functions, but the data actually sits in other functions, so it has to be looked at holistically. Now, it is also very important to understand what is the scope, or what do I want to extract? What are the kind of business intelligence? What is the kind of insights that I'm looking for me to be able to drive a particular action or a result? For example, am I looking at reducing risks in a particular area? Am I designing the new roles and or a new function, or am I investing into a new application where we are spending way too much of time and effort, which is exerting a lot of effort and impacting the cost? So it's important to look at the end objective and then be able to see what am I being able to convince the stakeholders. Is the analytics being deployed at a strategic level, at top down, or are we looking at driving the customer value, increasing operational efficiency? Who is the stakeholder? And then depending on all of those factors that have been understood well, then it is also important to look at where exactly the impact is going to be. And that's where you would see, is the process being optimized, or are we designing a quality function, or at the same time, a technology solution that we are evaluating is impacting our business for quite a while? Do we have enough data for our stakeholders to be able to go ahead and take a decision, which is where analytics is very, very important. The next most important thing that I'd like to touch upon is, it is analytics, but it's not just about analytics. It's very important that we look at analytics and not as a magic wand. Analytics is about, it gives us the insights, but it is about what do we do with those insights? How soon do we do something about those insights? And do we watch the trends on an ongoing basis? Because the data is telling me something today, but the process or the capability might shift soon. And do I have a handle on that? And that's where something Katrina very nicely articulated, right from a reporting to a descriptive to a predictive to a prescriptive. It's very, very important. And it is important to weave that into a closed loop approach. It's not a one-time thing. It is something that we have to have a closed loop, right from understanding what are the categories that we're looking at, what are the trends, is there something that is happening that will impact my business, am I doing something which is going to change, is there an action that we need to take, how soon that action needs to be taken, and what kind of an impact will it have. And that's not a one-time exercise, it is a closed loop which has to be adopted to on an ongoing basis. With that, what I've done is I've picked up some relevant case studies, and I think this also very well elaborates some of the points that Katrina made. customer service is just not about labor arbitrage. It is about partnering with our clients and how we can bring in analytics more from a strategic to a tactical or tactical to a strategic level and be able to bring a win-win outcome-based kind of a result. Now, the first case study that I'd like to share with you, which is about one of our clients where it is something where an omni-channel strategy was to be designed. Now, this is very, very strategic. Just to give you a little bit of a background, a consumer electronics company where we've been working for the last 3+ years wants to launch a new product into the market. Now, that's a very, very strategic goal. How do we align? How can you actually assist the company to be able to do that? Now, it's very important to look at the product. The product is not an expensive product, not something that the company wants to spend a lot of money in terms of servicing the product, but at the same time want to make sure that the issues are minimal. If there are issues, the issues get resolved, and if there are certain queries, touch points, they are resolved at the minimal possible time with the minimal possible effort at both the customer and at the agent level. Now, this is what you see is an omni-channel strategy that we designed using analytics at the design phase, which is where how and what kind of a user base will be using this product once this product is out in the market. Now, this product is a huge volume that volume is driven because it is in stores like Walmart, Target, Sam's Clubs, etc. Now, once the product hits the market, what are the kind of issues that will come in, and will the issues and or the queries, how can we drive a particular traffic to a particular channel? And in that omni-channel strategy, what is the most appropriate channel? Not only are we increasing the customer satisfaction, but also reducing the customer effort was a very, very important goal, which is more of a tactical goal, but again goes back to making the product look good in the market as well, which is a strategic goal. So that's where you would see we got some really good results. The 97% resolution rate on the omni-channel strategy, which is pretty much on the web, where very less human capital has been deployed, and at the same time, reduction in any repeat conversations, etc., increase the customer satisfaction very, very high. So what basically we are trying to do here is right from when the customer comes in, contacts what he or she is contacting us for, we pretty much know. We have already predicted that to a very large degree of confidence, and based on that, we know where and how much of a time are they spending the minute they come onto the website. What also happens is we know what is the behavior, what are some of those issues in the product, and then quickly what we do is we also send them into something that we refer to as a channel selector, a smart channel selector, which gives us the ability to put them into a very, very known environment with the minimal effort, get the resolution quickly, and move out of the channel with the resolution, and not having them go into a queue of an IVR and or any channel where they will have to wait. So this way, is not only is the customer resolution very, very high, the customer satisfaction also is very high, and at the same time, the byproduct is significant cost savings at the client side. The next case study is more of an operational one, which I would like to share. Now, if all of us work diligently to improving customer satisfaction, in this case, one of our financial services client, Net Promoter Score, which is a very, very critical metric, the entire organization is aligned towards improving that. Now, let me be honest, we already are at a very, very high number. Now, if you look at the Net Promoter Score, at a 70+ is really very high, even from any industry vertical standpoint. to push it up and to sustain it itself is a mammoth task. And especially when we're talking about 10, 20,000 calls on a daily basis, it is a big task. So this is one of the tactical goals which actually aligns into the strategic goal, is something we've been able to accomplish. Now, why I wanted to share this with you is something that analytics is very important here to be deployed, because what is the framework, how is the framework that is being designed is very important, because also an important aspect that comes in is the analytics framework consists of the skill that has to be brought in, the technology, and how much of an effort before and after can be exerted, because here the results can't be a month later. The result has to be within the same day or the next day itself. So that's where we invested into a technology like the speech and text mining, which gives us the ability to cluster some of the data and tells us where do we get the fastest possible results. And of course, the framework that has to be designed, and before we put that into an engine or an intelligent engine, it is also very, very important to design that framework, because it's not just the technology that will bring us the results, but it is the intelligence that we design, the way that we mine using some of these machines and engines. It makes a lot of difference there. So that is another good case study that I wanted to share. The third one is an interesting one, which is where a lot of contact center operations are approached for seasonal capacity. In this case, a healthcare client year on year looks at seasonal capacity during the open enrollment season, where they would want to ramp up, let's say in the month of October, November, and ramp down in the month of February, March, April. And then what that really does is, not only is it a lot of effort, but a huge cost that is associated to it. There are two different ways to look at it. One is where a lot of contact center operations look at the traditional solutions of hiring people, but what you could do is look at some of the transformational solutions of using analytics and understand how can we bring in transformational solutions, how can we automate some of the easier activities here. Now, that is something which I will share how you could do that. It's very important to drill down using analytics what really is the objective. What we did was we first understood where is the capacity really being used. Why do we need so much of a capacity? Can we take away some of that capacity by automating it? And that's where it was important to drill down to the desktop level. And while we drill down to the desktop level, then look at some of those factors which will give us an understanding of what channel is that capacity being exerted in. Is the effort really high? While changing some of those dynamics, will we impact the satisfaction scores? And is there a system that really will support some kind of an automation? So there is a lot of analytics that's running behind, but once analytics is deployed intelligently, the right tools, techniques, and skills are brought in, this can do wonders. And that's exactly what happened. Even before we deployed, we had a very good confidence of understanding if this tool was to be deployed, we would spend X dollars and save X minus Y or X plus Y, which is a huge gain, win-win, and at the same time that reduces the kind of effort that is really required. So the solution that was deployed is robotic process automation, where since the agent is exerting a lot of effort on the employee desktop because of toggling between different systems, because of that, the learning curve is exceptionally high. There are process changes that happen every now and then. Then there are different levels of productivity of individuals with very less or very minimal visibility of what is happening. Robotic process automation took all of those challenges away, and what that really did was, because of the confidence through analytics, we were able to increase the productivity, also improve performance significantly. A lot of accountability in the delivery of high quality transactions was deployed, which gives us the visibility at an agent desktop level as well. So that's another good case study that I thought resonates very well with what Katrina talked about, where analytics is going and how it is driving some of the customer experience, customer effort kind of metrics very, very intelligently. Coming back to my original slide, which is the closed loop. Like I said, it's not just about analytics or data, it is about what action do we take. It is very important to understand that analytics is not just about reporting. Analytics is about how and what is the design. It can help make the design very, very crisp, clear, and effective. And at the same time, how is that design being deployed? At what time? What is the right time? Analytics is very, very important there. And at the same time, on an ongoing basis, how is that design of service being serviced on an ongoing basis is very important. And that's where the closed loop approach comes in very, very handy. It's not just doing it one time, it is doing it again and again, and at the same time doing it intelligently and making it much more intelligent, and taking the closed loop approach of being able to drive a particular action that also goes back to my first slide, why some of these challenges in organizations of deploying analytics, a lot of these questions can be answered, or a lot of these challenges can already be tackled if you go to your stakeholder by saying, I need $500,000 versus the kind of savings that I see are exponentially high. Some of those challenges around the skill, the capacity, and also the kind of investments that have to be made can be tackled very, very intelligently. And like I said, it's all about action, and how and what kind of an action and results are being driven can help us deploy a very effective analytics strategy. So with that, I will end and hand it over back. Thank you so much, and Andrew, I'll hand it over back to you.
Excellent. Yes, thank you, PK. Really appreciate that. Really good examples of the impact that actionable customer analytics can have in optimizing the customer experience. With that said, I want to go ahead and Katrina, maybe hand back to you for a moment here. Can you give us some examples of where you're saying analytics have an impact? And 1 second here, I'm going to make sure you can. There you go. I think hopefully everybody can see that now. And maybe Katrina, you can just close us out with a few thoughts, and where do we want to go from here?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the things that we heard PK talk about, we heard him talk about a lot of things, and I think the most interesting thing for me was this idea of, the complexity and the skills required to make this happen, and the experience to know how to work the process so that the analytics comes in, intersects the process, and you're using the right technology, the right analytics in the right way. So when I think about some of the challenges, I think that the key to successful analytics are in 4 main buckets. Identifying what you're trying to achieve and why. So that will be your clue as to where do you start, right? Because you can trail it back through a rational decision tree. What is the right set of data to focus on today, and how will it impact the results you're trying to create? We're all inundated with data of a variety of sources and processes. And so where do you start, and where do you draw that plan? And so I think having that focus is absolutely key. Don't try to solve all your problems. Tackle something you can get results with. Taking the time to develop that roadmap is critical. in order to create that closed loop that PK was describing, you have to have the roadmap, right? Because you have to know what the loop is that you're trying to close, and how do you find one end after you've started the journey, right? So the two ends come together. How do you create that integrated, continuous workflow that makes sense? And you need to have an outcome in mind. So how will you know when you get there? The internal stakeholders can really make or break any of these initiatives. And again, as PK was pointing out, looking at the details of the process, where does the data sit for each of those steps in the process, and then how do you bring all those pieces together? That's really dependent on the people involved in your project team, and having that executive leadership to bring all those people together and have the mandate. So that internal stakeholder alignment is super important. And then lastly, do you have the right skills? This is what I started off talking about. Do you have the right skills in place? And being very honest, right? People have to be honest about what they can do today, what they would like to do tomorrow, and how do you get there? And whether it's, people, there's skills that are needed at multiple levels, from people who understand your business strategy to people who can tackle the right data components and integrate them with other data sources. So being able to source the right skills, whether it's in-house or through a partnering relationship, and acknowledging that that's okay if you don't have them. The skills are out there, you just need access to them. So I think that's the other piece here that's really important. So with that, Andrew, I think you're taking things back over, right?
I am, yeah. Thank you. With that, I want to thank both of our speakers today. Really good information. Thank you for sharing. Lots of good insights, lots of good examples. I'd like to go ahead and now open back up to the audience to say, what questions do you have? Again, I mentioned at the beginning, you can ask your questions through the question panel on the right hand on the GoToWebinar toolbox. If you want to put those questions in there, we'll go ahead and take them in order. I do have one question, just to get us kicked off here. People want to understand, analytics requires specialized technology capabilities. In your experience, and maybe this is a good question for you, in your experience, are service providers building out on their own through proprietary applications, or are they using commercially available software?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've seen a little bit of both. I think some service providers who have a strength and a background in analytics, it may be part of a skill set they have elsewhere in the organization, are bringing those capabilities and designing and applying those to their analytics challenges. Others are looking for best-of-breed analytics capabilities and building those into the solutions that they present their clients. But the other interesting thing is, how does the service provider perceive the challenges out there, and how do they bring the tools to those challenges? That's actually another level of the discussion here. We are seeing service providers who create analytics tool sets and platforms that are intended to tackle certain kinds of challenges in the customer care process. And so they may bring together a combination of proprietary and off-the-shelf technology, but they will integrate it and create best-of-breed practices based on their perception of how to do this most effectively. So that becomes their particularly branded or their viewpoint on how to use technology to address analytics.
Yeah, really interesting. PK, maybe you want to share some additional insights from the examples you shared. What kind of technology was it? Were these technologies that were from the customer's perspective, or technologies that were being brought to bear?
Sure, Andrew. And I think very good question, because that is where a lot of organizations get hung up upon, or they go ahead and first invest in a tool and then look at what is the use. I think it's very important to look at the tool. Is that tool something that we are investing? Is that a one-time use or an ongoing basis? Decides a lot of that. For example, some of the tools that you saw, the examples that I was talking about, are not the tools that I really have to go and build on, or I have to build myself, because there is a lot of technology and experience from companies that specialize in building tools. They might not specialize in extracting the data, but they specialize in building the tools is already out there. It's for me to go to the market and be able to use the tools and have the right skills to be able to use that tools just at the click of a button or buy of a license is something which a lot of the intelligent vendors are moving towards.
Excellent. Again, I want to invite folks who are online to go ahead and enter your questions into the box. I have another one here that says, how does the maturity of customer analytics adoption vary by vertical industry? Katrina, maybe it's an interesting question from your perspective.
Yeah, I think the issue becomes not so much about the maturity as opposed to the application. So you'll see different kinds of analytics challenges by different vertical industries, and let's acknowledge that everybody deals with channel integration related analytics, for example, or social media related analytics. But then there's the analytics that comes with, for example, regulated healthcare interaction in the healthcare industry, and how stringent that regulation is. That regulation itself creates the requirement for a deep set of data. So the data's there. Now it's a matter of how do I use that. In comparison, in the retail space, the nature of the data has to do with consumer behavior patterns, right? How long has this customer been doing business with my company, and what kind of a history have they had? So the nature of that becomes a little different. And that's not always, in the retail space, for example, that's not always well captured because it's not regulated. It's based on every company's style of interacting with their customers and their consumers. So that could be less standardized or less mature across the vertical of retail in general. So that's how you might want to think about the differences in analytics.
That's really good. Good insight. I appreciate that. PK, here's a good question you might want to address, and Katrina, you might have some thoughts as well. It says, our organization is struggling to identify where to take first steps in building our analytics program. Any advice?
Sure, and I think a good question again, very much in line with what I was talking about. Frankly, it's about how much of an investment. Is that something which is now become a necessity, or is that for the future? It depends a lot on that. For example, Katrina very rightly mentioned today in the healthcare and or financial services, it has become a necessity. If you haven't invested, it's something that needs to be at a war footing front. For example, if there is something around fraud analytics, or if there is something about cost savings in the healthcare industry because of the regulation changes, etc., the strategy has to depend on that. So that's where it's very important to look at what is the driver as of today. Is it something that I need more information, or is it something that I need to fix or make sure that I'm covered because of the risks, etc. So once when you've got that, it is also very important to look at either the cost of quality or cost of poor quality in the organization. And depending on that, it is important to go back with a business plan to the right stakeholder or to the right sponsor within the organization, and then look at how much of a cost of poor quality or cost of quality is something which we need to either recoup or fix, or at the same time improve, and what is the kind of an investment that is required. Again, to bring in the right skill set, at least the people who have a good mix of not just the theoretical but the practical experience is extremely important. Like I said, a lot of organizations first go and invest in a tool and then look at what should we do with it. So all those things have to be avoided by first looking at the business need, looking at the operational design, and then getting the right stakeholders, sponsorship, and then start investing after a lot of these have been clarified and approved.
Excellent, really good. I appreciate that. Great insight, great feedback. I want to say thank you again to both of you for participating today, for sharing insights, for sharing examples. Really, really useful. Great information that hopefully everybody can take away. And if there are follow-up questions and people want to submit, we'll certainly look to try to get back with some of those. I do want to remind people to receive a copy of today's slides. Please complete the brief post-webinar survey. The next webinar will be January 13th, Journey to Net Promoter Score. Go online to register for that today. Again, thank you to everyone for your participation, and we look forward for your feedback. Thanks.